What's up, fam? Today we're going to be talking about personalities, personality typing, the Myers-Briggs, the Enneagram, and a general introduction into what's called typology. Okay, so what is typology? It's basically a way of measuring our patterns of behavior into certain categories that show us people's personalities. Now, obviously, this is not an exact science because there is no standard for behavior, but it's a pretty well-studied phenomenon, and there are entire fields of psychology that show that this has great credence. So, I've been watching pastors and preachers and people talk about the Briggs-Myers for years now, and to be honest, I'm an expert at the Briggs-Myers and personality typing, the personality functions and all those things. And I've been thinking a long time about teaching these things in a video format, but my perfectionism gets in the way. So today, we're just going to talk a little bit about typology, and we're going to start to learn what these different functions are, because I have invented a new system of typology that I guess I'll call Bodine typology, Bodinology. I'll work on the name. But this is all based on something called Jungian typology. Carl Jung was a psychologist who was a student of Sigmund Freud, and he actually basically was ostracized by his entire psychological community for his ideas, which contradicted things that Freud was teaching, like the superego and all these different animalistic tendencies. So he was ostracized, and then he actually lost his mind and was seeing visions of angels and demons and all this crazy stuff. And through that, he pieced his mind back together and became one of the world's greatest psychologists. So Carl Jung invented a system of typology that we still use today we call the Briggs-Myers. What is the Briggs-Myers? Well, there are 16 different personality types, sets of personalities, types of people that act certain ways. About 50% of them are introverts, about 50% of them are extroverts. About 50% of them are very perceptive to their outside world or to their inside world, they're sensing. And about 50% of them are more autopilot people. They're seeing the world, but they're more letting their intuitive self decide what to do. So there are also feeling people who tend to use their feelings to discern what they should do, or people who tend to think, use their logic or reason to discern what to do. And then, of course, there are judgers, people who are judgmental, and people who are more perceptive, more passive, more go with the flow. So that's a Briggs-Myers in general. There's also something called the Enneagram, which uses 9 numbers, which is, they call it like an ancient system. There's been a lot of ancient systems for numbers and numbers having behaviors or traits. Gematria, I hope I pronounced that right, is the ancient Hebrew form of that. There's many different forms of it, but the Enneagram is probably one of the most popular, and it basically has numbers 1 through 9, and then each one of those numbers has a personality trait, a behavior, a pattern, if you will, and that is the Enneagram. So you have the Briggs-Myers, and then you have the Enneagram. Well, how could you have two different systems, two completely different typology systems, and them both be accurate? That's not possible. They actually have to be the same system. So how do we combine these two systems? Well, the way we do that is by recognizing that, first of all, our breath and our breathing is the master function behind everything that happens inside of our body, that our breath is an action that goes through every cell in our body and controls it, influences it in some way. And the other way is by recognizing that these functions come from different parts of our body and that we're just representing different parts of ourself. That some people are more inclined or more in tune with their thoughts, their thinking, and some people are more inclined with their feelings. And so because of our habits, our patterns of behavior, they tend to stick to one way or another. Maybe they were raised this way, their parents saw it this way, maybe there's genetic factors, there's any number of factors. And it's certainly malleable, but what we found is that by the time you're basically adolescent, a lot of your personality has taken shape when you're a baby. Like by the time you're 1 or 2, most of your brain is formed already. So that is the gist. So what do I mean by that? Okay, so obviously introverted or extroverted thinking is going to come from your brain. I mean, obviously. Introverted or extroverted feeling is going to come from your feelings, your heart, or your stomach. So some of these things are obvious. Some of these things are a little bit more or less obscure, confusing. It takes a lot of time to get into the functions. And in the future, I'm going to do a video on each one of the individual functions and describe exactly how those work. But I'm going to start to introduce a new form of typology that takes the Enneagram and the Myers-Briggs and combines them together. And not only that, that is actually rooted in our physiology and our body. I guess you can call it, instead of Jungian typology, you can call it Bodinian typology. I've never found anyone who has the same personality typing system, but this is based off of physics and mathematics and the body and physiology and psychology and just studying behavior. So, without further ado, basically how you're going to start is you are going to just breathe and just feel your body, feel your breath, and see how long it takes for you to get distracted. And when you do get distracted, where do your thoughts go? Are you in your feelings? Are you in your thoughts? Where in your body is your breath traveling to? Where? Where do you spend the most time breathing into? What do you do with your breath? Are you breathing belly deep? Are you kind of shallow, but it's all going in your head? So you have to meditate for a while and figure out exactly how your body is made, but start to notice how your breath prioritizes its oxygen and where it sends it. So just like when rain comes down the side of a hilltop, eventually some more rain goes through a certain spot and it empties out a crevice, and then it makes a gully, and then that gully makes a big stream, and that stream makes a river, all through erosion, just one drop at a time, going through the cycle, the path of least resistance. Until obviously that river, that hole, is where all the water is going to go through. So in the same way, our brain, our neurons, our psychology, every time we send a thought, send a pattern, or send a breath, we leave behind the trail, the path, the logistics infrastructure for that energy to travel down. So every time you send a neuron, send a thought, a little bit of the matter left over from the electricity from that neuron stays there and builds a bridge. This is called neuroplasticity. So everything I'm going to be telling you is going to be based on neuroplasticity, period. This is based in science. This is not made up. This is not astrology. This is not some mystic system. This is as close as you can get to spiritual billiards. Basically, you're looking at the body, you're looking at the breath mechanics, and you're watching how point A hits point B, and point B hits off point C, and point C hits off point D. It's a pattern of logistics. So understanding that, know that the breath, our breathing, our lungs, the center of us is our master function, and that's where we spend most of our time, hopefully, if we're healthy, is breathing and focusing on our breath. So I just wanted to introduce this really quick. And in these next series, what we're going to do is we're going to go into each individual function, and we're going to start with number 1, which is extroverted sensing. So I'll give you a hint. Extroverted sensing is this present moment. It is a sense of seeing, hearing, feeling, touch. It is meditation, thinking about this exact moment, not the future, not the past. It is not reflected on the past. It is not necessarily feeling your body, although that could be part of it. It is the other master function to the master function of our body. If our body is breathing, then we are also perceiving. We're alive. So that's extroverted sensing. That's number 1. And if you're wanting to meditate this week, just meditate on being in this present moment, letting the moment go by one moment at a time. Because there's always plus one moment of time. There's always one more moment coming next. So be in this present moment. Notice your extroverted sensing this week or whatever you do. And just, be aware of that. It's basic meditation that'll help us get into these next videos. So good luck and Godspeed.